do this. And so I started, first thing, I just started eliminating anybody from the team that wasn't a culture carrier. And it didn't matter if they were a good performer, because some of them were. Some of them were some of my best, but they did not present the culture that I wanted. And it wasn't about white or black or male or female, it was about culture, right? If you're dishonest, if you're negative, if you complain, you won't be here, right? And so it was like, and it wasn't scalpel, it was like butcher knife. I was like, you three, hey, I've met with you, I see how negative you are, we're gonna ask you to leave, right? It was, and I remember my boss, Greg, was saying like, Don, you can't do this, you need, these people are your top performers, trust it. Greg, trust the process. I believe in this. It got so bad, I started getting threats. I remember a whole big group of gang people showed up at my apartment. You know, you better leave town now, right? And I was this cocky 19-year-old. You can't do anything to me. And then they leave, and I bawl my eyes out, right? I'm like, I'm so scared. I don't know. I remember calling my girlfriend. I don't know what to do. These big old mean gang guys are gonna kill me. But I stayed at it, right? Stayed at it. And after it got to about the 6-7 month mark, that company still published their #1 site, listed it by team and then by site, and at the 6 month mark, #1 on the whole site was Yakima, Washington. #1 in sales, performance, and revenue, just bang. And man, if I didn't just love it. And look, it all, you know, thanks be to God, because to be honest, it just came down to culture. You get people that are good people, honest people, you train them to do anything.
Right.
I mean, you can, and I just held to that, right? And I did every interview, people coming in. Other people did the front part, and I came back in. I'm like, look, I'm sorry, I know they got 5 years experience, don't hire them. I remember, like, why? This person fits it. They are not a culture carrier, right? You can see how. And it's funny. I was trying to hire people different than me, people that weren't super arrogant and cocky and ticking people off, right? And so. It was amazing. So then, from there, Greg reaches out and he says, Don, we want to make you a corporate trainer. We want you to travel all over the country and train all these call center managers to do what you just did. And this is where I made my first career mistake, right? Because I didn't think through it, right? Because these call center managers, they were typically just ancient to me at the time, you know, like 35, 36 years old, yeah. Right? Like in the twilight of their life, right? Just ending. And I was this 19, 20-year-old kid. And so I would go travel into a call center right in Rock Springs, Wyoming or something, and I'd go meet, and I'd spend 2 days with the call center manager, and then I'd sit down with them and tell them everything they were doing wrong.
Now, did you keep your other job, and this was just
they replaced me? Or? Yeah,
okay.
I had a lieutenant that worked right beside me. His name was Russ, and he took over the site, right? And he's now a general manager with Best Buy. He's doing really well. Like his own store, but. So I would go around and I'd just tell them everything I did wrong, right? And I realized there's a big difference between being the boss and being the consultant, right? Yeah, being the trainer, just saying you're doing this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. Especially if you're 20 and they have a lot more experience than you. Right. Like, who are you?
Right.
You don't know anything. And it was an absolute failure. I mean, I could not get any. I don't think I had one win. And I was on the road every week, right? Sunday night I'd get my assignment. Monday I'd prep and fly out. I was there Tuesday, Wednesday, and meet with them Thursday, fly out Thursday night. That became my life, right? And at first, you know, 20-year-old, you're like, this is the greatest job ever. And then you don't have success for 5 months at all, and you're like, this is miserable, miserable. And I was making $26,000 a year then, right? So I was rolling in the dough, right? So a good friend of mine, who was at a different company, called me. He's like, hey, you should come join this private call center company that we have. Come run one of our centers. And I was eager to do that. And so I did. I left and joined this new company called Focus. And I was running one little, about 150 employee call center in Lehigh, Utah. And man, we were killing it. We were doing really, really well, right? Same type of philosophies, culture, and everything like that. We were doing outbound sales, mostly doing outbound long distance sales, if you can remember when long distance was actually a thing. And we did and we did outbound cell phone sales, which was really hard. Like we would call people and have to sell them a cell phone they'd never seen or felt or touched. And the best people could get one sale every 2 days. You could imagine how hard that job would be, right? Hundreds of calls for nothing. So we were doing really, really well though, and I was still ambitious. I wanted to move up, right? I was 22 at the time, and I was like, I want to excel. So I cold called the CEO because I didn't mind cold calling. And I finally got through with him, and his name was John. I said, John, hey, I want to spend some time with you. Like, I want to just do like a weekly one-on-one with you at your schedule, whatever's convenient. And he said, well, I've only got one time that works, 7:30 in the morning on Fridays, because I work from home. Now, his office was about 2.5 hours away from where I lived. And I said, hey, you know what, that actual schedule works perfect for me. Right?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, you couldn't have said it better,
Right.
right? Because you never miss an appointment. And so I started to, on Friday mornings, get up around 4:30 in the morning, get ready, get on the road, and drive up there and meet John, right? And we'd spend sometimes 30 minutes, usually an hour together. We'd go through my numbers, through things. He's a big Maxwell guy, right? We'd go through all that kind of stuff. We'd talk about how to develop, what I'm doing. And my numbers got better, my mentorship got better. Like, everything just started to get better with like a coach in my life that was holding me accountable. And I had a boss at the time named Sam. He was my direct boss who reported to John. And so after, 5-6 months of doing that, I remember John, when we would be talking, he'd start to say things like, geez, marketing's really struggling, or recruiting's really struggling, gotta fix that, or whatever. So when I'd leave, I would make sure my side was still killing it, and then I'd still go work with the marketing guy and try to help him, or the person over HR, or whatever John said was his biggest problem. I would reach out and be like, hey, how can I help? What can I do? And we would work together and solve it. And so when I'd go meet with John, he'd be like, hey, I spoke to so-and-so over marketing, spoke to Chris, and things are going a lot better. He said, you've been helping. Man, that's great. I had no idea I was embodying servant leadership, right? I was being ambitious and trying to do it the right way without being annoying. I was much different when I was 19. And so after doing this for a few months, John finally said to me, he's like, Don, why are you doing this? Why are you coming up here every Friday? That doesn't make any sense. And I said, well, look, I don't want to hide. Look, we don't have a vice president of operations in this company. We're $7 million in size. When you're ready to get one, I want one name in your mind. I know I don't know everything. I know I need to learn. That's why I'm here. But when you're ready, I want you to just think, I want to make it done. And he's like, okay, well, that's fair. But he goes, Sam, your boss, is the guy that's the candidate for that. Like, we're grooming Sam. And I said, I'm totally fine with that, right? So we kept doing it. A couple months later, I still remember it was a Friday. I get a phone call from John. I answer it. It's Friday afternoon. And he said, hey, we're going to open a vice president of operations position. We want it to be you. Just don't tell Sam. Yeah, he said, I'm taking Sam to dinner this weekend. And so they did. And Monday they announced it. And I was the VP of operations, right? And became Sam's boss. I literally jumped him. And now Sam ended up becoming one of my best friends to this day. Like, we're extremely close. But the first couple months we were not. Right?
I can understand.
Yeah, it was super hard. He was a former Marine, and he was very intense, man, very intimidating. I was very nervous about it, but it worked out great. Very close to his family. So I became VP of operations, and John was such a great leader because he embodied hey, I'm going to empower you to make all of your own wrong decisions and right decisions, as few as they may be. And so I got ambitious and thought, how big can we grow this thing? We were 7 million in size, and so I started to look at the market. And I finished my MBA, finished my undergrad. I was working on my MBA in international business, and I started to explore all these things. I learned the mantra that sales solves all sins. Right? There's no such thing as an expense problem. You have a revenue problem. If you're spending too much money, just make more. Right? Okay?
Right.
Everything gets better when revenue's up. It's just magic, right? Your stress is better, your pressure is better, everything's better. So I thought, okay, we were what was called a BPO, which is a call center outsourcing group, right? And so I started to work with sales and marketing and said, look, we just need to acquire more clients, more. Well, how are you going to service that? We don't have enough space. Don't worry about that, okay? I will figure that out. Sales solves all sins, just close the deals, right? And we started winning contracts. So then I launched our Philippine operations. We launched a big 1,000-seat call center operation in the Philippines, launched another one in India. I launched one in El Salvador, 3 more in the United States, and all of a sudden it's been 3.5, almost 4 years. We went from 7 million to 50.
Wow.
And we had 3,500 employees. And I was on a plane, every week or every couple of weeks, right? But it was incredible. We were just thriving. And here I am, 26.5, almost 27 years old, and I'm thinking nothing could be better. And I'm just crushing this. And then my wife gets diagnosed with cancer, right? I had 3 kids at the age of 6. You know, she's fine, everything worked out fine. But
Praise God.
I was like, I'd be totally vulnerable. I was mad at God, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how can you do this?
What do
And
you mean?
I'm doing everything right. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't swear. In fact, most of my teams don't do that now, right? Okay? Not so much in the Philippines, I was working on that, but everywhere else it was great, right? And everything was working. And you give my wife cancer, and I have 3 kids under the age of 6, right? That's not even just not fair, it's not right. And I struggled. I was mad. And I would love to say my suffering was anything great, but it's nothing compared to my wife's. Right? She was the one with it, right? So we go through 2 years of radiation. The hardest thing I had to understand too was, she said, "Don't treat me like a cancer patient." Right? I don't want you to stop working. I don't want you to work from home a lot. I want you to do everything you normally do because it makes me feel like a cancer patient. And as a husband, it's hard to grasp that because you just want to help. You want to be a savior. You want to look. I'll take care of you. I'll carry you from your bed to. I'll do anything. No, because that makes me feel like I'm a cancer patient. So I kept working. Now we had family. My parents and stuff were around. And they helped, but I kept on the road. I kept doing things right. And it was hard, it was lonely. I became really good at crock pot meals, right? Because I knew I could put food in the morning, and I'd farm my kids out to neighbors, like, okay, you're gonna watch Logan, you're gonna watch Jude, you're gonna watch Kennedy, right? I'll come back at this time. It was so stressful. And she got through it. Everything worked out, thanks to God that it did. But as we got through those 2 years, I remember just vividly thinking back, you know what, I wouldn't wish these 2 years on my worst enemy. And at the same time, I wish everybody could taste it. Everybody. Because those 2 years taught me how to be a better husband, how to be a better father, how to be a better brother, a son, an executive, a leader, an entrepreneur, a manager. And my relationship with God was through the roof, never been better. Because of that misery.
Yeah.
And I wish, it's hard to wrestle with that because I never want it again. Somebody said, "Do you want it again?" Absolutely not. At the same time, boy, I wish everybody could just experience it.
Yeah.
So a few months after, my president, John, came to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing some mission work or maybe retire or something, and I'm going to make you president." And I prayed about that and wrestled that with my wife. And so I came back and I said, I got a better idea. I'm going to resign. Right, here I'm 29, almost 30 years old, and I saw the future, right? Like I'm going to be on a plane 29 times a year, right? Okay, and it didn't work. It wasn't what God wanted. You ever had that? Where you know everything in your head, you know that's the right call, but then God's like pulling your heart saying, "I'm telling you, this is not the right call." And it doesn't mathematically make sense. It's like 2 + 2 = 12, and you're like, "Well, look, I know that isn't true." It's like, trust me. It is. So I worked on the successor. His name's Paul. He's still running the company today, and they're thriving. And I left. They gave me a nice little exit package so I could take some time, but I left. And I joined a startup. And a startup, employee number 5. I was chief operating officer and an owner. And as I joined, they didn't tell me this when I joined them. We were called Launch Leads. We were a digital marketing kind of outsourcing agency. When I joined, and after, I still remember like my second day or something, we had a negative $10,000 run rate every month, right? And I remember sitting with the other owner, his name was Bubba, and I said, Bubba, that means every hour we're open, we lose money. And he's like, "Yeah, that's why you're here." I was like, "God, you didn't tell me that, a month ago when we started this conversation." And so, it was a grind. And the first month, it was awful. And I remember thinking I'd made the wrong choice, right? I remember telling my wife, this was stupid. Why did I went from having an assistant and a travel budget and company cards and all this kind of stuff. Now a third of this company's on my own card, right? And we're losing money every time I wake up, right? We've got 6 employees. One I'm going to fire. I mean, it's just terrible. And I remember I had a long commute, about an hour and a half commute home. And I got in the car and I called my wife, like I did every time about to get on the road, and I was complaining about how hard it was, how miserable it was, and how I made the wrong choice. And I'll never forget this. My incredible wife said, "Are you done?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "Okay, good. Lucky for you, I didn't marry a loser." And she goes, "You've been complaining about this for a couple of weeks, and I'm done. So are you. Now, you can complain the rest of tonight if you want. But starting tomorrow, every time we talk about this, you can only talk about solutions. That's it." She goes, "Otherwise, you're the problem."
Wow.
That's
And
good.
and she became my coach, right? Who wouldn't let me get sucked into the woe is me, life is hard. It was only solutions. And that became a rule in our marriage that we still adhere to this day. If she complains about something or I do, she'll go, "That's your first day. That's your only day." And then that's it. Then the next day, it's about, okay, here's what I did to solve it. Here's what I'm doing. It's powerful how all of a sudden everything changes. So I did. I started to think solution-oriented, started to solve this. And I remembered, sales solves all sins. Well, we better just get some more clients, right? And even though we had no structure underneath it, terrible employees, it's always better to have an A sales and marketing team and a B product, right? Because you'll catch that one up eventually. Just keep selling. So we did. We started to hustle and sell and sell and sell and get new clients. And it took about a year and a half, but in a year and a half we were crossing the 1.5 million mark. And we were profitable through the roof, right? And we had close to 50 employees, and it was amazing. And I got some awards for that and spoke a lot about that, and I loved it. And I would have stayed at that company forever, right? I still have ownership in that company. They've been on the Inc. 5000 a couple times since then, and they're thriving. But my wife, this was December in Utah, so the snow was about as high as this table, right? It was freezing. You guys don't know what that is in Florida. Snow is a white substance.
We've read about it.
Yeah. It's on television.
I read that it's
right?
cold.
It's science fiction. So she's like, "I want to move to the East Coast." She's from Virginia. She wanted to be back to the East Coast, better schools, and not as cold. And so I talked to some headhunters and things like that, and very quickly found me a spot to run some insurance call centers for State Farm in Fort Myers, Florida. Right,
Okay.
which is, it's more humid than here, if you can imagine,
Yeah.
right? So we did that. I did that for about a year. It was very successful. Met some great friends there. And along the way, a group that was recruiting for a company called Xerox said, "We need a global vice president of customer care to run the Amazon account," right, which was 3,000 employees. And I was tempted by fate to work with Amazon because I just thought this would be super cool experience. And so I was running their call centers in Jamaica, Guatemala, and South Africa. I started writing for Forbes I write for their entrepreneur sales and leadership group, and people started reaching out to me and saying, "Guy, will you give us some advice? Will you coach me on this? Will you do this?" And my wife, who's clearly the hero of this whole story, right? She said, "Look, you better start a business, right? If people want to pay you something, you got to pay taxes on it, right?" So I started my company called Accountability Now. I started that about a year ago, where I work with entrepreneurs, executive businesses, and help them do everything I've always done, which is sales, marketing, and leadership with their teams in a different way that's not just consultative, but it's like, no, you need tactical help. What can we do? Let's get all the way down. Let's really solve problems, not just philosophical. I'm going to do a Dr. Phil session with you, right? Mm-hmm. Let's actually approach this from a business perspective. I started as a hobby, right? A year and a half ago, I thought I'll just do maybe 2 or 3 clients and that'll be super easy. And now I have 17 clients in 4 countries, right? And some of them are quite sizable. Like I have a group out of Vancouver, they're 15 million in size. I have a group in Tampa that's almost 20 million in size. And I work directly with their CEO and their leadership team on all this kind of stuff. And it's like, wow, this is making me more busy than I thought I would, right? But you start to realize so many entrepreneurs between the 1 million and maybe 25 million mark don't know how to get out of their own way, right? They hold on to people too long, right? And they do it in the spirit of, I'm trying to be a good person, I'm trying to be a good Christian. And so many times I have to walk through the philosophy, actually, if you really love the person, you let them go. You're keeping them on for your own sake because you don't want the conflict. You don't want to be that guy, right? But if you how you say goodbye is more important than how you say hello. And so really helping them make some of those decisions. You get some of these family-run organizations, and they've got people that have been there that are destroying their organization for a decade, but they don't know how to do that. And so you teach them, and you walk through it. And you teach them to realize, boy, God, you know what? If I really cared about them, I would do what God does for us. Lets us suffer.
Right.
right? And lets us learn from it and gives my wife cancer
Yeah.
and says, no, I know you're gonna hate me,
Mhm.
but in 2 years you're gonna love me,
Mhm.
right? And you go think about some of the greatest coaches in sports history, especially college. A lot of people said during that time, boy, I sure hated that coach,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, right.
He made me do more sprints and more of this, but I hated him, and I'd never go back there.
Right.
But I'm so thankful I did, because it's now all these millions in the NFL, right? And so that's what God does, and that's what I do in my side business, accountability now, and
Why don't you tell them about the 4 C's now?
and so yes, thank you. The program that so when I was in my 20s as this young VP, man, I struggled. I struggled to struggle with life balance and figuring everything out and how to juggle every ball, and especially how to work with people. And so I started to work on my own methodology and program, which I call the 4 C's of accountability. And as I created that and instilled it in myself to make myself better, I started to realize there's power in this. And so I started to teach it to everybody that worked for me. Everybody that works for me since then has to memorize it, has to learn it, has to know it and quiz on it. And it started to work. And I started to realize, personal accountability and then team accountability is the secret to every success, every successful enterprise, everything. And so I live this, and that's what the element of my whole coaching program is now, is we teach the 4 C's of accountability and drive everything back to it. And so I'll walk through the 4 C's if that's okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
So the 4 C's, the whole 4 C's actually encompass 2 basic rules, right? The first rule is accountability always starts with me. You don't get to walk into a room and say, no, your fault or yours or whatever. You always start with yourself. There's a Hall of Fame quarterback named Steve Young, played for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
He used to always teach this story. When he was a young punk and he'd throw an interception, he'd go lay into that receiver, right? How could you do that, right? How'd you drop that ball or whatever? And he'd create conflict on the team. So then he realized, if I start with accountability of myself, always, even if it's not totally my fault, but I always start with accountability of myself, it breaks down defensiveness. So even when he threw an intercept or pass and the receiver dropped it and the guy picked it off, it's only Steve Young whose stat's going to get hurt, right? But he'd go to that receiver and say, I'm so sorry. I must have thrown it too hard. I must have not seen you weren't looking. It's my fault. And he goes, because I started with me, their defensiveness never rose up. And he goes, almost always they respond, no, Steve, no, it's true. I should have done better. I let you down. When before he would attack them, they'd be like, you threw it too hard or whatever, right? That's the first rule. The second rule, though, is there are no egos in accountability, right? And it's another sports analogy, but in baseball, right? I'm a big baseball fan. I grew up being a big Nolan Ryan fan. When they throw a pitch and you swing and you miss, that's a strike, right? And it doesn't matter if the umpire calls it a strike, or the opposing player calls it a strike, or somebody in the fans yells, that was a strike. It doesn't change the fact that was a strike. And so many times we or our team members or employees, they spend so much energy arguing with, hey, it's not your job to tell me I messed up, right? You're not my boss. You don't tell me where I messed up, or husbands tell wives this, right, or whatever. When it's like, why are you doing that? It's still a strike. You still messed up, right? Why don't you just start with, hey, thank you for having the guts to tell me the truth. And let me rip it, and try it again, right? And so those are the first 2 rules that you have to embrace. And then you go into the 4 C's. The first C is critique success, right? And you think about it, whenever you get to the mountaintop, you're instantly on the way down. Instantly. That's physiology, right?
Yeah.
And so critique success is the principle of you never reach it, right?